right, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. This is the third in a series of Validator workshop that we're putting on here. We're joined today by Torsten and Remy Wah of the EthStaker Community. Happy to be here. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hello, good
Morning.
morning.
All right, so I want to go over a few of the agenda items and just a couple community items before we jump in and get into the fun stuff. Today we will be going through EthWizard, going through the merge ready setup and potentially showing a Mdboost on top of that. York will be showing off the Mdboost in EthDocker, and we'll be showing EthWizard migration in a merge ready setup. And then depending on if Somer joins us today, we may get lucky and show off the Mdboost setup for Gurley using his setups. And then what we'll do is distribute the POAP for this community call. And I'll address the previous POAP distribution along with the instructions for this, this distribution for this workshop at the end of this call. So that is it from me. Additionally, we'll open it up to community Q&A afterwards, after the workshop has gone through. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have while this is happening, either in the YouTube comments. We'll be sure to, I'll grab those and I'll ask them to either Torsten or Remy, or go ahead and get into the EthStaker Discord and ask any questions in the Validator Workshop Merge channel. The link to the Discord and the specific channel is listed in the YouTube chat, in addition to the video description, so you have those ready for you. Okay, all right, so we got some of the housekeeping items out of the way. Gentlemen, let's get our hands dirty and see what some fun stuff we've got going on here.
Yeah, I think we wanted to also talk about how the Gurley merge went and how what's the plan for the mainnet, right? Because
Yeah.
we had a good amount of news that was just published in the last few hours, actually. So maybe we should start with how Gurley went, like how the merge on Gurley went. So that happened like 2 days ago, I believe, if my memory is correct.
That's right. Sounds right. I'll go for it.
And like the merge happened and it went like quite well. There were a few small issues, and I have these notes from Perry, who is like one of the
He's a
guys
DevOps
at the
guy, yeah.
EF, who's spearheading many of these merge tests. And so if you want to check out these notes, you'll see what are some of the issues that happened with some of the clients. I believe there were some minor issues with Netamine. There were some minor issues with Aragon,
Besu.
Besu. I don't know if it was like a combo of Besu and Teku, or just Besu.
Just Besu.
And there was some configuration issues, right? So
Mhm.
like even the EF devs are having some issues configuring their own
For
setup.
sure.
So make sure to prepare in advance. We'll give you the guides that we've been talking about these past few workshop as well. Like some of the issue they've been having is actually related to this JWT token that we've been talking about a few times already. And so you need to create that token. You need to configure your client to use that token. We will repeat that. But of course, we will also show it to you.
Yeah, so
know.
those were
Go
the
ahead.
two types, right? We had two types of issues during the Gurley merge. The first one was JWT token not configured, or I think there were actually a couple consensus layer clients that had no execution layer client configured at all.
That as well, yeah.
Yes, that as well. So you need an execution layer client. It needs to be connected to your consensus layer client over the engine API with a JWT token. Make sure that is there, right? So that's the first type of issue. The second type of issue was we saw something on Gurley that had been planned for, which threw some of the execution layer clients for a loop anyway. And that is we had two merge blocks. That can happen. That's baked into the protocol. Never mind had issues with that. This is being tested in the so-called Hive tests, where they're testing all kinds of various merge scenarios. So Nethermind already have a code version that now passes these tests and fixes the issue. I think Besu also, some Besus kind of said this valid block is invalid and haired off onto an invalid chain. In the end, the consensus mechanisms in Ethereum worked and everything kind of reorged to where it should be. But that can take a minute, right? Like Aragon as well, it took them half an hour to reorg back to where they needed to be. So that was I think the wrinkle on the chain side was that we had two merge blocks. This can absolutely happen on mainnet. It's good we saw it here because the code in these 3 execution layer clients was strengthened to handle that better. And we expect that if that happens on mainnet, then the execution layer clients, as they did here, will reorg to the correct chain.
So just to ask a
Go ahead.
real noob question here, that is sort of that's why we've been excited and waiting for Gurley, right? In relation to all of the other test nets, because this is Gurley is more representative of what we would see and expect for mainnet. So this is also necessarily why we wouldn't have seen that behavior in previous test nets. Would that be a correct assumption?
I'm not actually sure that's true. Gurley is a proof of authority. Okay. So in Gurley, I think it was maybe more likely we would see this because in Gurley, the difficulty of any one block is either 1 or 2. That's a big swing, right? So, because it's proof of authority. Whereas in mainnet, the difficulty for any given block is going to be pretty uniform. It might go up and down a little, but it won't be 2x, right? You might still see 2 merge blocks on mainnet. That may still happen, but I think the likelihood of this happening on Gurley was higher because the difficulty per block is fixed to 1 or 2, and it is such a big swing, right? It's like literally 2x. Yeah, Gurley certainly is from an amount of contracts and activity. It's a much larger testnet than mainnet. There's also a lot more community validators on it. So it's actually one thing that came out of this that's really good to see is that a day after merge, we're at about the same participation on Gurley as we were before the merge. So when it was still called Prater, right? Which means that by and large, everyone went through merge with their setup on testnet. Well done, guys. That is awesome, right? Do that again for mainnet.
I love that. No, it's
so
good
someone's mentioning that there's some echo with your voice, Torsten. I'm not hearing this echo, but
let me see.
Audio issue.
I'm not sure.
So there was another question. Yeah, there was another question someone mentioned. So with these types of issues that we've been seeing with the Gurley merge with Besu, Nethermind, and Aragon, would that lead to any kind of slashable offense?
It would not. And can we do a quick test? If I'm echoing, am I still echoing when you're muted, Remy? That's OBS. You'll figure it out. Okay. All right. So no, these are not slashable offenses. This is a really good question, right? So reorging the chain, being on the wrong chain, then coming back, all of that is allowed in the protocol, perfectly normal behavior. It is not a slashable offense. The only slashable offenses we have seen on the chain in the wild is running your validator client in 2 places at once. Don't do that. Other than that, you're good to go.
Someone has also asked, will there be a new session from start to end for those who missed? I think you can just rewatch the videos that we did. The first workshop was pretty much in deep.
I think that's it. I kind of loathe to repeat myself, and nothing has really changed from the first time we did it. So YouTube recordings being a thing, please just go back and watch it,
I think that's a good point, so those looking for a top to bottom comprehensive instruction, the point is that the content that was previous shot in the other validator workshops, that's still relevant. It still stands. If you follow those instructions, you're going to be in a good spot. So please feel free to review that content. In fact, if you go on the YouTube channel, there is a playlist specifically called Validator Workshops. All of the videos are on there, and the most recent ones you'll be able to get up and running.
Okay, so we covered what happened with Gurley. Do we quickly want to cover what is going to happen with Mainnet?
Sure, and I've got this new blog post here. Maybe I can share my screen quickly.
Sure.
So this was just published, and I'll paste the link so that everyone can find out the same content here. And so the devs actually came together and decided that that we're good for mainnet for the merge, and that we need some of the details of when everything's only going to happen. And so the first thing that will happen is the Bellatrix fork, which is supposed to happen at this epoch here. So that will need client updates. So if you're running on mainnet as a validator, you will have to update your client in the next few days.
When is that Bellatrix epoch there? What day is that?
I believe the date is scheduled to be around September 6th.
At 11:34:47 a.m. UTC. How can we be so precise about this?
The reason we can be so precise about this is the beacon chain right now has a slot every 12 seconds.
Correct.
And then we can compute when that slot will happen, this one, pretty easily. So we just add the amount of seconds that we need to reach that one.
And how precise are we about this merge date here, this TTD? What's a TTD and when does that happen?
So the first part of the merge is the Bellatrix Fork, which should be no real issue there. But the next part is going to be this TTD value, which is called Paris, which is the actual merge of both chain, the proof of work chain and the proof of stake chain. And that will happen at this value here. And this is very tentative. The target date for this TTD value is September 15, but it might be earlier or it might be a little later, depending on what the miners are doing, right? So this value depends on the hash power that is currently on the network. And if miners decides to lower their hash power on the network, or if like new miners join the network, which would be very surprising, it can be, and it can go faster or it can go slower. But in any case, we can always adjust that TTD value.
Do we want to do that?
Like if there's like a bunch of miner that decides to do some kind of protest and like turn off their machine and it takes too long, we might want to lower that value to make sure that we don't hit a target that's too far in the future.
And I should maybe also say, right, this doesn't have to be a protest. This can just be a completely reasonable decision.
It could be too.
If you're like a GPU miner and you get a good deal for your GPUs from some other outfit or gaming outfit or whatever, and
Absolutely,
you're like, yep, it's time, just sell these. We got a month left to mine. It's not worth it. Let's just get rid of these things here and stop paying electricity, stop paying for the space. Completely reasonable decision to make. So that's one thing that can happen. So TTD is the total terminal difficulty, the total difficulty reached when the chain merges. The reason this was chosen rather than a block is so that you can't have somebody saying, haha, I am going to mine my own little super low difficulty chain, and I'm going to reach the block early and I'm going to hijack the merge. So that's why it's total terminal difficulty. The other thing that can happen is that a bunch of hash rate comes into Ethereum and we hit this early. By the 18th, when this number will be confirmed, you would need more than the total all-time high of Ethereum hash rate, which was 1.1 petahash. We're currently at about 900 terahash. to hit this before Bellatrix. So that's not gonna happen. Let's just say that. If for some reason hash rate spikes in the last few weeks and we hit merge, like 5 days after Bellatrix rather than 10 days after Bellatrix, yeah, so what? You're already updated in your clients. You need the update for Bellatrix. So once Bellatrix is through, the rest is just cruising. We do have a question here. It's a really good and technical question. It is, if running 2 validator keys at the same time is the only slashable offense, then why is execution layer client diversity a thing? Couldn't a Nethermind bug could have its own chain and be slashable? Okay, so I'll go into that. The way I worded this was very deliberate. I said the only slashings that we have seen on mainnet are or on testnet. So the only thing that we have seen is somebody running the validator client twice. That doesn't mean there isn't another case. There is another case. It's called the so-called surround vote. You have to have a very specific situation for this to actually happen. So why is execution layer client diversity a thing? Let's take first you need a supermajority client to even worry about this. So if it's a Nethermind bug, unless Nethermind has a supermajority, you don't care, right? So what happens is you're on the wrong chain with Nethermind. This chain, importantly, does not finalize. Because it doesn't finalize, when you come back to the main chain by fixing your Nethermind, you deploy a fixed code, right? Sorry, getting distracted by the chat. You deploy a fixed code for Nethermind, you come back to the main chain, the canonical chain, because the side chain you were on, the wrong chain, was not finalized. This isn't a surround vote. You're fine. You're not getting slashed. The worry here is really kind of like an outlier. We have a supermajority client, that's Geth right now, which is incredibly stable. And this supermajority client calls a block valid that is indeed not valid. I would also say this has never happened before with Geth, ever. It has never happened, right? If this happens in this really kind of outlier case, then if Geth still has a supermajority, we're in a bit of a pickle, because now the chain you're on, the wrong chain, did finalize. So now the choices are either I come back to the main chain, surround vote slashing, so I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to come back to the main chain. Or I'm going to sign a voluntary exit, but now 80% of the network is trying to voluntarily exit, and the exit queue is going to be over a year long, and you're just going to get drained down to 16 effective and below because you can't come out fast enough. That's kind of like the worst possible scenario here, and this is why we're talking about execution layer client diversity. Okay. Is there any reason for me to keep my validator running on Gurley, or should I start exiting and start syncing mainnet? Up to you. I mean, if you've gone through merge and you know this all works, you can, and you don't have the computational room to run 2, then by all means exit your validator and start doing mainnet. If you can run a testnet and mainnet together, that's always useful because there will be more hard forks in future and you'll want to test those. When do we change our configs to include the engine JWT fee, recipient, etc.? So I'm assuming that means mainnet, because for Gurley you should have done it by now. So when do you change your mainnet config? That's really kind of up to you. The client, the TTD, the Turtle Terminal Difficulty that you see here on screen, it will be confirmed on the 18th. We expect client releases in the days after, and a blog post with all the client releases on the 23rd. So if you don't want to do this twice, this being updating your clients, and you just want to update your clients and do your config and do it all in one fell swoop, then the 23rd of August is a great time to start on that. If you want to do this early, you can. With the caveat here that Besu, for example, needs an additional flag to enable the engine API before it has a total terminal difficulty baked in. So the easy answer is do it when the final client releases are available, which will be at the very latest by the 23rd. Okay, second question. After the merge, will the consensus layer client store the blocks, or will the execution layer client continue to store the blocks? Yes. Sorry, I should probably... that was facetious. Let me unpack that. The blocks, right? So the consensus layer client stores the Ethereum chain blocks, the complete blocks, with the consensus layer information and some form of execution layer information. The execution layer client also stores the execution layer payload. Now, the consensus layer client could also store the execution layer payload, and that's about 200 gig of storage a year in addition. But it could also go and say, all I'm going to do is I'm going to store basically a hash. I'm going to store a reference to it, a blinded block. And then if I really need the payload contents, I am going to ask the execution layer client for it. How this is handled is on a consensus layer client by consensus layer client basis. As far as I know, all CLs either have or are working on the ability to just store a reference. In some of these, like I think in Prism, it's an optional parameter to do that. You know, look into your specific client to see how. Maybe Remy will add some of that to the guides if we can figure it out as well and ask the client teams. But long story short, the consensus layer client can but does not need to store the execution layer payload. When mainnet, I think we just answered that.
So we're on this blog post here from the Ethereum Foundation that actually details all the different plan or the schedule for mainnet merge, right? So this is the full schedule. So the TTD will be reassessed on the 18th, and then from there, the client teams will make new releases that will include the
final TTD
value. And then we will have the Bellatrix fork on the beacon chain on the September the 6th. And the estimated date for the actual Paris fork, which is where the merge will be fully done or completed, is estimated to be on the September 15th. But that depends on the hash rate value.
So can I just channel a certain kind of maxi for a moment and say, if all these dates have just been defined by the devs, doesn't that mean that Ethereum is centralized?
That's a very good question. And if you agree with these dates, you can just keep following the plan here. But if you want to do something else and like build your own chain, you're still able to, right? So that's the general way of seeing this, right? So this is what the devs came up with, and we want to try to make some kind of consensus on this. But if you want to do your own chain, and maybe there'll be a few different chains, right? So maybe the miners will keep mining on their own chain, and they will eventually create some kind of organization with some governance to decide to remove the
to that. Yeah. I think I should say that the only comment I have is please be very careful interacting with any chains that fork from this. It is likely that an easy 90+% of them will be pure grift and scam. There might be one or two legitimate ones. There is a legitimate proof of work chain already called Ethereum Classic. That's been around since the DAO hack. That continues to be around. So if you're really a proof of work maxi and you're like, that's my world, you know, that would be a great choice. The other stuff looks like grift right now. Well, we'll have to see, but please just be cautious, right?
Absolutely.
So you don't lose your ETH.
So there was this other question here. Michael was asking, are you recommending to enable Mdboost prior to the mainnet merge?
There will be relays probably available. I think you can enable it prior to mainnet merge. My understanding is the relays will be kind of in we exist but don't give you blocks mode for like 24 hours or so, right? Just to allow the merge to go through smoothly and finalize, and then they'll start producing blocks. So I don't really see an issue with configuring this now. Just be aware that for the first 24 hours, you might not actually see any blocks from the relay because the relay will be there, but won't actually be producing blocks until we see that the merge has gone through successfully.
And I don't think there's a relay for mainnet yet, right?
There is not, no. So, you know, the relays for mainnet have not been announced. I'd expect that to happen much closer to the actual merge date.
So there was this follow-up question here from Michael again. He's asking, was there any issue with Mdboost merge in Gurley? I don't think so. I haven't seen any issue on my side.
I have not seen any issues, no. We've had a couple very small issues on the Validator client side. So I think both Nimbus and Lighthouse are sending registrations to the relay for validators that have either exited or aren't active yet. That that violates the spec. So you will see in the logs something like error 400, validator not known, registration failed. It's not fatal, and it's something that happened because you have these clients trying to register validators that aren't actually active yet or active anymore. And so I expect that that will be fixed, and then we won't see these errors. But that's the corner case, right? Like it's trying to register a validator that hasn't been activated yet, or it's trying to register a validator that's already exited.
I think that pretty much sums it up for the plan for the merge on mainnet here. I think we are ready to switch to the
demos
that we have.
Do it.
Right. So the first one I'd like to show is EthWizard. EthWizard is this little tool that can help you get configured and set up on your own machine very easily. So if you use EthWizard in the past, you should be able to just easily do this migration to get ready for the merge. And I'll show you a very simple demo here. I've got this set up here on Gurley. And so this machine here is configured to work on Gurley. It was previously installed with EthWizard. So let's see what happens if I just do and try to execute EthWizard again. So this is like the one-liner to start EthWizard. And maybe I'll paste this link in the chat so that people can check out the project on their own time. But let me just copy this line here, go into my machine, and that'll download EthWizard. That'll ask me for my password to start it. And then from there, it'll go into this maintenance mode because it'll be able to detect that EthWizard was already installed on this machine. And it'll show me this very simple dashboard where it can tell me that the installed version of GEF here is 1.10.20. But there's an updated one, which is 1.10.21. And so the upcoming maintenance task for GEF is to not only upgrade the client, but also configure it for the merge, right? Nothing very hard here. Same thing for Lighthouse. So this is like a previous version of Lighthouse. The installed and running version for Lighthouse is 2.3.1. But there's a new version available, which is 2.5.1. And so it needs to upgrade the client and configure it for the merge. So all I have to do is click on this one button here called maintain. I clicked it and it does everything for me, right? So it'll do the JWT token configuration. It'll update the client. It'll update the configuration for starting the client. And it'll ask me for the fee recipient address, right? Because this is a new value that needs to be entered in your configuration. And so I'll be using my own address here. And you should make sure to use an address that you own and that you control, so that you can receive all the transaction tips and potentially the MEV value if you choose to configure an MEV solution. So all I have to do is click enter, and it does it all for me. So it'll have to update Lighthouse, so it's downloading everything, stopping the services, restarting them, updating the configuration, and here it shows the dashboard again. So it tells me now that I'm updated to the latest version of all these clients, and no more maintenance needs to be done. Right, so that's, if you use FWizard in the past, that's all you have to do. And that's for Gurley. On Mainnet right now, it'll tell you that you don't need to prepare for the merge because the clients are not available yet. But once those are available, a new version of FWizard will be released, and then you'll be able to use that new version to do all the same thing here. So nothing special, nothing to be done. If you want to confirm, you can check out the logs. And so since this is using the same convention that Summer Esat used in his guides, you can use the same different commons. So let me see the Geth service here. So Geth is still syncing, but if I look at the startup logs, I should be able to see somewhere in there that it's now using this new JWT token. Can't remember the line. Here it is. So it's this line here, which says loaded JWT secret file. And so this is the path to the file, and we can see that it's now running on the engine API port, which is authenticated to. So that confirms that now my Geth client is ready for the merge, and I can do the same for the Lighthouse beacon node. Let's quickly have a look at that too. And so it's still syncing here, but if I look at the first few lines since it was restarted, I can see this line here called block production enabled. And it should tell me that it's now using this authenticated endpoint, which is the new engine API endpoint, and that it's using this token here for the JWT authentication. So that confirms that my beacon node client is well configured. And I can also check out the validator client here. So if I checked my configuration for the validator client, what's it called? It's called Validator service. I should be able to see now that the suggested fee recipient address was now included there too. So it should be very easy if you used FWizard in the past to get your Gurley set up ready for the merge. Hopefully you did that in the past, but now it's available.
And remind me,
So,
can that fee address, that can be a smart contract address too, right?
Yes, it
yes.
can be.
Okay.
So it can be any Ethereum address. It can either be like a smart wallet, a regular wallet, a smart contract address too, depending on how you want to receive the tips and if you want to distribute it. Maybe you're running a validator with a few friends and you want to split those tips in some kind of ratio. Maybe you could use the smart contract for that.
You could, right? So I think the most common contracts you'll see is either a multi-sig wallet, like a Gnosis wallet, or a contract if you're part of like a rocket pool. They'll want you to set the fee recipient to their contract so you can't steal the fees, or you're not stealing the fees. You can, of course, steal the fees, and then they will detect that and they will punish you accordingly.
All right, so that's pretty much it with FWizard. One other thing that we can do here is show you how to configure Mdboost on FWizard, or if you use the summary set guide, that should be very similar, depending on which client that you use.
Go ahead.
If you want to configure your MEV solution with Mdboost, you can use the guide that we've mentioned before. So I'll keep pasting the link here. So we have this section called choosing and configuring an MEV solution. And we did a preview a few weeks ago. That I don't think that preview is still 100% up to date, but the instructions here should
Close
be
enough.
very good. Right, so here's how you could go ahead and install Mdboost. So it's just a bunch of commands that I could paste here. So it'll download and install Go, which is required for Mdboost.
So what's Go?
Go is just a programming language. So Mdboost was written using this programming language, and you will need to install Go beforehand.
So what do I need this here? I mean, Geth was also written in Go. Why don't I need Go to run Geth?
That's a good question. Mdboost is not releasing binaries yet. So hopefully, eventually they will release binaries that you could simply download and execute. But since they're not releasing binaries, you will have to build it from source, and you need Go to do that.
Right. So that means once you've done this and copy pasted all this, you are 100% a dev. You've built something from source.
Absolutely. All right. So now I've installed Go. I'll create this dedicated user to run Mdboost. I will install Mdboost globally.
What does that command actually do?
The
one you're running right now.
This is downloading all the packages, the dependencies for Mdboost, and it's compiling them together to build this.
So this is actually your source compile, right? And it creates the executable that you're going to run. Very cool.
And then I'm just installing this globally and changing its permission for the Mdboost user. And so the last part here, the next part here is to create a systemd service to run Mdboost. And this is going to be for Gurley. We don't have the relays yet for Mainnet since they don't exist yet. So you'll have to wait to do this for Mainnet if you want to use Mdboost.
So I see here that Mdboost is using a single dash and something like a Geth uses double dashes. Is that a problem?
So this is for the different configuration flags when starting Mdboost, but this is just a convention that they used. They could have used like double dashes and it would have been fine, but this is what they describe in their documentation. So we're just gonna follow what they mentioned on using there. So when I'm in Nano, if you've never used Nano before to edit a file, if you want to save the file, you have to press Ctrl X, and then you'll be asked to, if you want to save the buffer, you just type yes or Y, and then you press Enter to reuse the same file name.
So say it is 2 weeks from now, Mdboost have a new version out. Now what do I do?
That's a very good question, and that's a question for which we don't have any specific instruction.
We do actually. Install Mdboost globally, just those 3, and I'll do it.
You could just like redo those 3 and restart your service, and you'd be good. So this would reinstall Mdboost globally, and it would reinstall the latest version.
That's right, because it's got @latest there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we're done with configuring our service. Now all we have to do is reload systemd so that it can see this new service being added. And then from there, we can start the Mdboost service, and we can check if it started correctly with this command here. And so when I'm running this command here, I can see that the service is active, and I can see a few logs down here below the main service details here. So I can see the logs, and I can check that it's running on this fork ID, which is the one for Gurley. And it's using 2 relays, which are the relays that we configured here. And so it's actually started, and it's listening on this port here, which means that it works, right? So that confirms that our service started correctly. This next command here will simply enable Mdboost to automatically start on reboots, so that you don't have to manually start it. And then that's pretty much it for installing Mdboost. Now you have a service that is always running and that can be used by your consensus client. This next part here is to actually configure the consensus and validator client to be able to connect to this Mdboost service and like ask what are the blocks that can be included that will give me additional value. And so the first part of this would be to configure since I'm using Lighthouse here, I'll have to change the consensus client, the beacon node, to add this configuration here. And so I'm very familiar with this, but if you're not, just let us know, like, where's my service, or how can I know where to add this configuration? So I know that my service is in this path here. So I'll just
one little trick, you can actually do just a list, right? An LS for Etsy systemd system, and you'll see all the services there. And the ones that are your consensus and validator client will be named as such. It'll be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be like Prism Beacon Service or Teku.service or whatever, you know.
And so you'll want to find this exec start line here and go at the end of the line and add this new value. So you want to add this -- builder space with this address here, which simply gives the consensus client the endpoint to connect to Mdboost. So I will save by typing Control-X, yes, and enter. And then now I have to do something similar for the validator client, which is named just Lighthouse Validator here. And so I have to find this exec start line again, go towards the end, and add this new configuration. And so I save my file. And now I have to tell systemd that my configuration was changed. So I have to do this Daemon Reload, and I can restart both of my beacon node client and my validator client here. So all I have to do is type systemd systemctl restart, and then Lighthouse beacon, and then Lighthouse validator. Right?
Okay.
And I should be good to go. Now my system is fully configured to use Mdboost. Mdboost was installed.
How would you verify that you got that right? You didn't do a typo and those are still running?
That's a very good question. So I would have to go and check my logs. And so if I go and check the logs for the Lighthouse beacon. So this is actually something I mentioned with the Lighthouse client team. There's very few logs about the Mdboost connection being displayed in the log here. So if I check, I should be able to see some kind of log that says registered. Here it is. Forwarding registration validator request to connected builder count 1. So if you see that line, it means that
I get a request error, invalid response. Okay.
This line here
Yeah.
should be confirming that your beacon node, in this case Lighthouse, is well configured for Mdboost.
Okay.
It's not very explicit, and it doesn't confirm that it's actually connecting to this endpoint here, but that's already something I report
Where else
to
might we
Lighthouse,
see logs?
and they said that they would try to improve the logs here. Another place where you'd be able to see those logs is in your validator client. And so there should be a log somewhere in here that's
actually the beginning. I'm not sure.
It says publish validator registration to the builder network. So if you see this line, it confirms that you are good to go, and Mdboost is well configured.
What about the Mdboost logs themselves?
Yeah, we could have a look at the Mdboost logs too, and that should confirm that it's actually receiving those connection from the beacon node client, right? So it's called Mdboost, if my memory is correct here, and you should see
So I do
Something
see
here,
a
the post, right?
validator. There it is. Post validators 200. Status 200 means it worked. So it registered your one validator here.
Yeah.
Great.
And so that's the way that you can confirm that everything's working fine with your Mdboost setup here.
Lovely.
So that's pretty much it.
Excellent.
I think there's a few questions.
We have a couple questions. Is
yeah.
EthWizard suitable for Gnosis beacon chain mainnet?
That's a very good question, and the answer is no.
Okay, EthDocker, however, is.
Yeah, EthWizard was only meant for Ethereum.
Right. EthDocker works on Gnosis beacon chains, so that's another option. Can you talk a bit about how block bodies will be attested with Mdboost?
I'm not sure I fully understand this question, but maybe you want to see, you're asking like if the block bodies will be valid or not.
I'm not sure, right? So let's break this down. How block bodies will be attested with Mdboost. They'll be attested the same way that they always have been. The block bodies are visible once this thing has been proposed. Everybody can attest to it and say it's valid or it's invalid. If the question is how will block bodies be proposed with Mdboost, then the client, your client, will actually just see a blinded block. The relay has the actual block body. You won't see the block body. You'll just sign that, yes, I want this block, and then propose it. We do go over that in the intro to Mdboost that Remy linked earlier.
Yep.
So this keeps your client from just basically stealing the MEV. Yeah, and that's it, right? So the relay is trusted by you to actually give you a valid block. What happens if the block is invalid? Well, you miss that proposal slot. That's it. Because everybody else will then validate it, will attest to it, and will say this is an invalid block. How are we for time?
I think we have like 10 minutes left, 10 or a little more.
Can I go show how to do this with EthDocker?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. That's on Helvetica to undo. How about now? Okay, great. Should be able to share that part. Can you see this window?
Yes.
All right, great. A little bit bigger. So we have something running here right now with EthDocker. And I'll just do a quick tail on the consensus logs just to see. So we're running here. We're not running an Mdboost right now. You see that I do have an address. That's good. So I have two ways of enabling this. First, I should probably know what am I running right now. So I'm just going to look into my env right quick, and I see I am running Lighthouse and Geth. I do have a fee recipient, and Mdboost is currently false. I could edit all this manually, and I would enable Mdboost, or I can just go through the config wizard one more time. And I'm going to say I want to run on Gurley. It's going to be an Ethereum node. We're going to do Lighthouse and Geth. I'm going to skip that. Want to use Mdboost? Yes. Relays default. Grafana, yes. My fee recipient in here. And no override TTD. And some pandas. Very important. This now, you see here, it pulls Mdboost and builds it. That's done. Everything else was already done. So now, once this is done here with building everything, I should be able to just say fd up, and it should restart the relevant services and give me an Mdboost. I can, maybe before I do that, take a quick look into env as to what has just changed. So I see I still have my fee recipient, but now up here, my compose file now has Mdboost YAML in it. Mdboost is true, and the relays are now the Gurley relays, not the Robston relays. So just fd up. It's already running, so what it should do is it should recreate, and it did, the consensus, the Mdboost, the validator. So I can take a look at my consensus layer, which is now starting. You see that here. And I see this little note here, Mdboost enabled. And then I can take a look at the Mdboost service itself. And that is up and running and listening. And once the once this consensus layer here actually gets through checking its database, I should see logs in Mdboost that things are being registered. So see here, block production enabled, issuing fork choice. Okay, forwarding register validator request. So that happened. And let's take a quick look here at Mdboost. And I see that my one validator I'm running here got registered with Mdboost. That's it. Very simple.
Awesome. I like how simple it is.
All right.
So we have two
Any
more
last
questions.
questions?
Yes. Someone's asking: is there a chance that you can be slash
For
for
an MEV block you proposed?
Yeah.
No. I'll say no and then a caveat, right? So no, because the worst thing that can happen is that block is invalid, and then the rest of the network will look at that block, say that is an invalid block, and you will lose your proposal slot. In fact, I had this happen to me without Mdboost. After Gurley merge, I proposed 2 invalid blocks on a Lighthouse Aragon combo. Not quite sure yet why. Might have been just a bad database. And so I just missed those proposal slots and got dinged for not doing my proposal. That's it, right? The caveat here is the slashing risk with Mdboost is the same as with any other execution layer client that has a supermajority, if they indeed use one that has a supermajority in the back end. So as long as we have execution layer clients with supermajority, there's always a very small slashing risk, or kind of being stuck on a chain where you can't come back without slashing risk, right? We went over that earlier in the call. Okay, could Mdboost cause a centralization risk? Yes, there is a risk here that we end up not just with maybe 1 or 2 relays, but a single builder and single searcher for all blocks on Ethereum, because they just manage to outcompete everyone else. They have more quants. They have the better strategy. They just always offer the best paying block. And so all of Ethereum block production ultimately centralizes into one entity. That could indeed happen. It's a legitimate concern. Something we'll have to watch. Competition is how this is supposed to not happen. You know, that there is more than one entity that can offer the best block at any given time. Next question. Will we be able to discern how much of rewards going into the recipient address is due to MEV? Potentially yes, because you know or can know what the priority fees are in any given block. So you can just say, well, what was I paid? What were the priority fees? And the delta between what you were paid and what the priority fees were, that's your MEV reward. Okay, next question. If Mdboost crashes, is there a fallback? Indeed, your local execution layer client is your fallback. Depending on how this works timing-wise, you might still miss your proposal. So there's a bit of a risk here. It could be that if you're already late and then the relay doesn't answer and then you fall back, you're not quite in time to propose the block. But yes, your local execution layer client is your fallback here. Any other questions?
I think those are all the questions that we have.
Then I think Anvetica needs to talk about POAPs while we still have a little bit of time in the call.
Right. Yes, so let me switch over to the screen here. So today we do have a POAP distribution. The minting instructions are displayed on the YouTube feed right now. There are some slight updates to these instructions, so I want to make sure those are relayed and pointed out. If you are looking to claim today's POAP, you need to send at least a minimum of 2 USDC, DAI, or RAI to EthStaker workshop.eth. And that can be either a mainnet, Polygon, Optimism, or Arbitrum transaction. You have 24 hours from this stream starting at 3 p.m. UTC today through 3 p.m. UTC tomorrow, August 13th. And what will happen is as long as you have made that transaction within that 24-hour period, you have 2 USDC, DAI, or RAI or more. Those wallet addresses will be captured, and then we will compile those and put those into a POAP.delivery distribution where you can put in your ENS and or your wallet address, and it'll be deposited to that wallet. Now, just to address the previous workshop and the POAP distribution, those are up and live on POAP.delivery. The distribution links are on EthStaker.cc. I'll also add those to the EthStaker Discord. Just a quick follow-up for those who did attend the live stream and are unable to claim or for whatever reason your wallet address was not listed. We have compiled those wallet addresses. Those will be added on Monday, and then you can go ahead and redistribute those. Once those have been added and updated, we will send the updated links on the EthStaker Discord and also the website, and we will update the links on the YouTube channels as well. Again, that's EthStakerWorkshop.eth. Send your donations there. And just a real quick on those funds, what will happen is a portion of those funds over all of the workshops that were hosted for the Validator merge prep workshops will be distributed between Remy and Torsten and myself for hosting these. Just because they are a much heavier lift when compared to community calls. They're much more technical, and there's much more in terms of volume of these. Additionally, the remaining funds will be set over to fund a public good of EthStaker's choosing. We will announce that deposit, or donation rather, on the EthStaker Discord when that has been made public. All right, that's it from me. Anything from you, gentlemen?
I think that's,
just
go ahead.
Just one comment maybe to something to keep an eye on because it's bubbling up. The US have sanctioned the Tornado Cash addresses. Flashbots have gone ahead and are censoring transactions to and from Tornado Cash addresses in their environment, which means they will also be censored in Mdboost. If you're using their relay, other relays might not censor. The Flashbots relay will most likely censor these transactions. There is a, shall we say, vigorous debate about this. So just keep an eye on that. You know, the usual suspects will no doubt be blogging and YouTubing and all those good things.
I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, gentlemen. This has been very educational and valuable for the community, so I appreciate it.
Maybe say we do want to do one more of these, I think, on the 19th, right?
Yes, I believe that's what we have scheduled. When that's locked in, we will add that to the EthStaker Discord. Actually, real quick, that's a good point, Torsten. So let me just shill the other upcoming events. So tentatively plan on the 19th of August for August or September.
That we tentatively said the 19th of August, but you know what? I'm rethinking this now. The blog post for Mainnet is on the 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
How are we feeling about the 24th instead? Like middle of the week, do it right after the blog post.
Yeah.
So it's right after the final releases. We're Mainnet ready. Yeah.
Let's do that. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 24th is better. Let's do that.
All
Next
right.
one will not be a Friday. It'll be a Wednesday.
Perfect. So 24th for the next Validator workshop. We have Dapnode that will be joining us on the 16th of August. They will be going over how to prep, if you're using their platform, how to become merge ready. And then we have a swell community call that is happening on the 22nd. Both of those events, the dates, all of the applicable details can be found on EthStaker.cc or the EthStaker Discord. Links to both of those in the video description. All right.
Perfect.
I think we got everything covered here.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.